Record. Here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a Dublin-born writer, musician, and social activist. His ventures include the Free World Charter, a set of 10 guiding principles by which we could create a world of abundance and fairness for all. Free Worlder, a worldwide people-powered free-sharing site that encourages the giving and receiving of goods and services, and Honor Pay, a site focused on encouraging appreciation and gratitude by awarding honors to others. He is also the author of VDay, The Second Dawn of Man, and Into the Open Economy. Welcome to the show, Colin Turner. What's up, brother?
Hey, Matt. How are you doing, my friend? Lovely to be on. Lovely to be on here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's good. We got connected by, I think you're one of your staff, and I got to look at your work, and I'm excited to dive in because I looked at your charter is the first thing that she sent to me. I was like, this is amazing. It's so good. So where do we start? I'm going to learn about you as well as everybody else at the same time. So why don't you share us a little bit about your work and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, perfectly, yeah. Okay, again, thanks a million for having me on. Yeah, I know it's all very last minute, but I've no problem. I can talk about my work all day and all night, so it's no problem. Something obviously I'm very passionate about. The Free World Charter, yeah, well, I suppose you'll have to go back a little bit before that. The Free World Charter was started in 2011, and I think maybe like most people, or like many people, I should say, in 2008 was kind of like a waking up moment for a lot of people when we saw the banks failing. A lot of people started to ask new questions that had never been considered before, like where does money come from, and do we really need to use money, and how does this thing work anyway? So a lot of people, like myself, were questioning those things, and in my journey of questioning, I suppose I was lucky at that time that I've been in a particular situation where I just sold a very successful business, and I had quite a lot of money and quite a lot of time in my hands at that time. So I was able to kind of do quite a lot of research and investigation to these things, which is not a non-trivial thing, because a lot of people nowadays really are so busy with work and lives and that sort of stuff that they don't really have time to question many of the normals of our society. So I was very lucky in that regard. So the Free World Charter came about. I came across a site called the Venus Project, which I'm sure you know, and the work of Jacques Fresco and Buckminster Fuller and a few other visionaries who were more or less proposing a society that actually didn't use money at all. And while I was fascinated with these ideas, I was also kind of a little bit concerned that a lot of them were very technologically focused, and that maybe not everyone really wants to be involved in a highly technological society. They seem to be kind of offering really one option, that basically let's create a hugely cybernated, automated society where the machines really do all our work for us. And well, I thought that was really exciting and fascinating, but I also was a bit concerned that maybe that wasn't exactly the whole, wasn't really what everyone would prefer, because a lot of people really actually want a more simpler life. They actually prefer a simpler life rather than moving to a more complicated technological life. So my idea was that we could, between that and the Zeitgeist movement, I said these guys got a lot of really good ideas of how we could actually move beyond money. So I kind of said, well, let's try and distill these ideas down into the core components, because it doesn't necessarily have to be highly technological. You know, for example, we could, if we wanted to, have a really basic, primitive society without any technology that would also be successful and people could be happier. Obviously, not everyone wants that either. But the point is that the idea with the charter was, well, let's actually distill these ideas into the core components in such a way that basically we create principles for optimally operating a society that can operate without money, but not necessarily with technology or without, but that can actually serve everyone. So it's kind of like a set of principles for an optimized society that more or less that services everyone's needs. And of course, principles are very, very important in that is, reprioritizing our basic approaches to life and our basic expectations. Whereas we may spend a lot of time and energy now on religious interests or on consumerist interests. Now we need to really deprioritize those and reprioritize life and really our shared common fortunes on this planet, because really that is the most important thing. Whatever you believe about God or wanting to succeed in your career, whatever. I mean, the most important thing above all that must be all of life on this planet and of course, our shared fortunes on the planet. So that's really where the ideas of the charter was, to basically to try and create the sort of guiding principles for the optimal society, where they're not really they're not like commandments or edicts, but it's just like as long as we stick with those principles, we're going to be doing well, and if we deviate from those, we're going to be causing an imbalance. And so it's like a lot of things, life is about balance. We have to do not too much, not too little of things, in order to prosper, really, because that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to prosper spiritually, and of course to feel well and to have all the things that we need. So it's kind of a very long, convoluted history of the Free World Charter, but for me, that's something that something that I completed in 2011, and it's gone through a couple of revisions since. It's got a huge amount of support from a lot of people, and especially from quite a lot of people who actually feel, as I do, that maybe a highly technological society is not necessarily the answer. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm saying it's not necessarily the answer, and we should have the option to choose that. I would like to see a world where maybe people could live in like a Venus Project city if they chose, or people could live in a basic treehouse if they chose to do that either. We should have the options. Well, we will have the options anyway, but that's why I wanted to frame the charter in that idea, where we're not actually really supporting one thing or another, but just saying we just stick to some basic rules, then it should work out okay.
That's amazing, brother. I appreciate the good share. I like to kind of sit back and absorb it all. It's a beautiful intention, and I'm grateful that when you sold your business, you started to look at the problems of the world. And I think a lot of people start there. They look at the world and they see what's going on and they say, whoa, especially what they're sharing, what I'm receiving is pretty challenging. It looks like there's a lot of help that is needed out there. And so taking all of these different concepts and then starting to ground it out, or what are these principles? I had David Lombear, Senepass. He was my last podcast I released. He's a native elder, and I think it was him, talked about Atlantis. And he said Atlantis had these guidelines on a pillar in the middle of the city, and this great huge pillar that everybody saw and was aware of, and it was just general guidelines, and we can all kind of get on board. So maybe you can start off and just share what the 10 are and see how people resonate with each of them, and they can kind of start there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. It's not entirely a new idea, of course, to have it like these kind of founding principles for any sort of society. I think lots of societies have done that. I mean, probably nearly all. And of course, it has been embodied in religion in many societies as well. Like for example, the 10 Commandments in the Christian religion is kind of the same type of idea, where you're trying to promote sort of best practices for operating society. So there's been plenty of stabs at it. Of course, you have the Georgia Guidestones as well as something similar. But I'll give you a quick rundown through the principles. They're very short and they're very simple. And if anyone wants to check them out, they can go to freeworldcharter.org and have a look themselves. Each one is kind of given like a little short explanation as to why it's there and what it means. But so number one is the highest concern of humanity is the combined common good of all living species and biosphere. So this is really just putting life or a shared existence really at the top of our priority ladder, because it has to be there. Whatever you think about anything else, our physical reality demands that we put life and our shared fortunes together. The second one is that life is precious in all its forms and free to flourish in the combined common good. which basically saying that more or less we share this planet with other species and they're free to flourish just as much as we are. And of course, a lot of people kind of say, well, okay, well, what about smallpox and what about mosquitoes and sort of stuff? So I get that as well. And of course, we have to consider that what's said there is in the combined common good is that obviously if maybe one creature is making life hell for all other creatures, then maybe we have to do something about that, you know. It could actually be quite easily argued that humans are the one species that are making life hell for other species. But anyway, yes. But the point is that, yeah, that we have to prioritize. We have to allow all other creatures to flourish just as we are allowed ourselves to flourish. Number 3 is the Earth's natural resources are the birthright of all its inhabitants and free to share in the combined common good. This is really basic stuff, maybe saying that we all have an equal share of inheritance on the Earth. Lots of people like to think that we don't, but actually we do. Number 4, every human being is an equal part of a worldwide community of humans and a free citizen of Earth. Of course, we're really pretty much just dissolving borders in that statement, kind of saying, well, borders are not, they're not particularly useful and dangerous in a lot of ways. And of course, we're all an equal part of this planet, again, a free citizen of Earth. So yeah, again, it's really just about saying that the borders are something that are less than helpful. Number 5 is our community is founded on the spirit of cooperation and an understanding of nature provided through basic education. Yeah, that's pretty much self-explanatory, that we understand the world, we come to understand our world really through education and understanding of nature and our shared reality, I suppose. It sounds so obvious, but really it's given the way the education works now and the way we get to learn the world, really it's you know, it's so far removed from this. You know, we just get bundled into sort of classrooms all kind of at a competitive age, and we're kind of really kind of slogging it out there for marks and grades and those sort of stuff. And none of this stuff matters really at all. You know, it's the stuff that we educate ourselves is really ridiculous. You know, like teaching kids algebra without teaching them how to communicate or without teaching them how to deal with their own negativity or resolve conflicts. I mean, it's a big bugbear of mine, of course, education, and a big thing that we're looking, another project I can talk about later that we're hoping to deal with. Number 6 is the big one. This is the money-free one. This is our community provides for all its members the necessities of a healthy, fulfilling, and sustainable life freely and without obligation. So this is pretty much taking down the entire monetary edifice in one short sentence. And again, it's not just a case of attacking the money system. It's a case of saying that if we want to live, if we want to prosper on this planet, and we want to live in balance, and we want to have a healthy, sustainable life, then this is what we need to do, because obviously there are any amount of examples of how the monetary and the consumer system is pretty much tearing up the planet and destroying ecology here. So that's something that really just has to stop. Unfortunately, the reality is that that because the monetary system is such it's so addictive, I suppose, to people. It reduces all our decisions really to a simple arithmetic formula, you know, which is kind of like, if you want to have something, have I got enough money in my pocket to buy this thing? And yes, I do. And then that's pretty much the decision is made. If you can afford to buy something and you need that thing, then that's the entire decision. Whereas it's never that simple, because maybe that thing you're buying is something that's got highly toxic substances in it, or maybe it's highly destructive into the environment thing to produce, and maybe there's a whole catalog of human abuses behind buying that thing. You know, like, you know, we talk about iPhones and all this sort of stuff, and the amount of human abuse and resource abuse that goes into buying these things. But really, when we just live in a culture where really, if we have enough money to buy that thing, we buy that thing, and that's the decision is made. You know, so we have to move away from that and start looking at the other costs of things rather than the financial costs of things. when you reduce everything to a financial cost, it becomes too easy to manipulate and to make the wrong choices. Number 7 then, again, very simple. Our community respects the limits of nature and its resources, ensuring minimal consumption and waste. Well, this is actually probably one of the more successful ones nowadays, because we do see a lot of these huge advances coming along in recycling and recycle management and that sort of stuff. So a lot to be hopeful for there, really, the way we are actually thinking about how we use resources and how we manage our waste and stuff like that. So thankfully things are changing that way. Number 8, not so much. Our community derives its solutions and advances progress primarily through the application of logic and best available knowledge. So this is a kind of a way of saying, well, if you have a social problem, it may be a political solution is not always the best solution. Not saying that that's an absolute, but there can be like scientific solutions, or there can be ways of using the best available knowledge that can maybe solve that problem. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but I don't know. For example, if you need to build a school somewhere or whatever, it can be a political decision, or it can be a scientific, or more like, I don't really like use the word scientific, but the more like where you're using the best available knowledge to apply to that decision, whether that's the best thing to do that. Maybe it's not the best thing logically to build a school in that place, where it's politically it is the best thing because somebody has X amount of budget to build a school, so they just go and build a damn school anyway, even though it's not really needed, and they really need one down the road, but they just don't have the funds for it, so, or they don't have the political persuasion or power or whatever. So a lot of this stuff, the way the lobbyists and all that stuff works, that the best decisions are not always based on the best available knowledge, but really based on political persuasion and all the forces that go with that. Number 9 then is our community acknowledge its duty of care and compassion for members who are unable to contribute. This is something that's probably quite normal for society now. We do tend to look after the sick and the elderly. I mean, this is pretty much the basic thing in society. I think we're pretty good at that anyway. But it just needs to be in there that if we are operating in a world that doesn't actually use money, then obviously everyone will be kind of, I suppose, will have an onus to kind of contribute a small amount to actually keeping the running of that society. But there will be some people maybe who, for one reason or another, are not able to, and we need to have the compassion to say, okay, well, we're going to look after these guys too, even if for whatever reason. I would even go so far as to say, is even if somebody basically just doesn't want to contribute, I think they still need to be supported, because this is just the way it works, and we don't always understand the reasons of why people, and we know that we can always just try and do the best and keep people engaged in society, and but of course we know in modern society we do have people who are, for example, unemployed, but they don't want to look for work and that sort of stuff. So some people can tend to they can slip through the gap, but we have to look after these people. We don't understand who or what they've been through or how they so I mean it's pretty much basic. Some countries are better at that than others. We have good welfare systems in Europe. I'm not sure about America or Canada. Maybe they do, but so it's kind of something that we kind of do anyway. But again, it's a no-brainer. If there's people there that need looking after, we need to look after them. And finally, the last one actually is probably quite a favorite for a lot of people, is that our community acknowledge its responsibility to maintain a diverse and sustainable biosphere for all future life to enjoy. And that basically means that even though we're all sharing this planet together, you and I and everyone else now, we have to also remember that there is seeds, and there are seeds of future people and future beings that are here now that are not going to exist yet, but they will exist in the future, and they deserve to have a good planet as we did. They deserve to have to give them a good planet. So it's really just for future generations, not just human generations, of course, but for all creatures on the planet. There you go. That's pretty much a rundown of the 10. If someone wants to go to the website there, they can endorse it, but they can also go and click on there. You can see a little explanation underneath each one. Most of it's pretty basic stuff, but unfortunately we kind of need it, because we're so, I know we're a little bit lost really in what we think is important and what's not important. So we do need a little bit of guidance, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, man, those are great. And I appreciate you sharing all that. They're common sense, they're simple, and it kind of gives us a direction. Everyone
Yeah.
is, we're like, okay, cool. This seems like everything like we can agree upon. Now it's, are we taking action towards any of them? And that's the big piece. So I guess the question I had next was, number one, curious how many signatures you've had, and two,
Mm-hmm.
how are you encouraging people to take action and executing on these?
Good question. Yeah, we have actually just we have about 60,000 signatories for that at the moment, which is good. It's not a lot more, but that's something we're working towards. One of the challenges that we obviously face, being a sort of like I kind of just like a for good sort of enterprise really is that we're trying to promote this kind of stuff in amongst the humongous noise of consumerist society and social media. And it's tough. I have to be honest with you. It's pretty tough to promote these kind of things where you really need someone to sit down and sit still long enough and even meditate a little bit, even just to see the sense of where this is going and why it's necessary. So not all people have time for that. So we have such a noisy society, that, and it's not easy to promote sort of things like this, which do require quite a bit of contemplation and a bit of measured intellect, I suppose. But what we're doing is we've been sharing it a lot on social media, of course, since it started, and we've kind of suffered quite a little bit in the last maybe year or two, because as the way the Facebook algorithm changed and that sort of stuff, where things like our page we had like 50,000 members on our page, but now it's very hard to reach those people, because the Facebook changed the way it operates. So it's kind of been tough. It has to be said, it's been tough for the last couple of years, keeping things going and keeping interest in the thing. But yeah, putting it into action is really where we're at now, actually. And there's quite a few things I can talk about that, if you like. The first one is the Free Worlder Network, which is basically, it's like the Free World Charter in action. It's basically this, we put everyone who signed the charter, we put them on a world map. If you check out freeworlder.com, you'll see a map and you'll see everyone basically on it. And we're encouraging people to actually go on there and to start sharing goods and services freely with each other, basically, and to start creating this completely free or open economy, as I call it, with other members on there. And that's happening right now, and it's going really, really well. We're really, really happy about that. So it's the absolute, it's the embodiment of the charter in action, so that's something I'm very happy about. It's been a concern of mine for a while, is that the charter is, while it's pretty much just a static document, and while it's nice, it doesn't necessarily do anything proactively. So that has been the push behind getting the Free Worlder Network going. I have to say that's going really, really well. And so we have people who are basically giving away small items or services into people in their local area and that sort of stuff. That's happening all the time. I have to say, I'm also happy to say that there are other sites as well, similar sites doing the very same thing. Like you have helpfulpeeps.com. I don't know if you've heard of that one, or you have Kindista, and you have there's a Free Cycle, for example. These are ones. So there's a kind of a rise of these kind of sharing sites. So I think most people are kind of cognizant that this is the mentality that we're going to be moving towards. So I love it. I love the fact that there are more than one site. I don't want to be the biggest or the only one. I want them to be as many as possible. That's what makes gives it everything color. So I'm very happy with the Free World thing, and that's the thing. That's basically the Free World Charter in action. It's also in that, I know you mentioned the honor pay thing as well. This is another little side project that I've been sort of doing in the last 2 years, which is basically a way of kind of bestowing gratitude to another person without actually giving them anything physical or or buying them something or paying for anything. It's like, I suppose you could call it a virtual thank you card, I suppose. But it's like a way of saying if you respect what somebody has done, or if somebody helped you in a great way, or somebody inspired you in a great way, you can more or less send them this honor through honor pay, as it's also incorporated in the Free Worlder network. So so basically, the honor pay thing again is a form of, I'd like to call it as it's a form of virtual currency, but a currency of appreciation. It doesn't have any value. You can't change it or swap it or do anything with it. It has zero function except just to embody that appreciation for it. And I have to say, it's nice to get them. I've got quite a few because obviously I'm the founder of it, and that's understandable. I've probably got more than my fair share, but it really feels nice to get them. And it's one of the things that I have been aware of is that even with the money system, it's not all bad, because if somebody does a good job for you and you pay them money to do something, you're demonstrating your appreciation for that job that they've done. So this is a good thing. I think you need to show appreciation. We need to feel appreciated. So the honor pay thing is really my way of encapsulating that little conveyance of appreciation from one person to another in a completely moneyless and resourceless way. So I think it's quite good. It's a lot of people use it, so I'm very happy with that too.
Amazing, brother. I love all those. I have so much to comment on pretty much every one. And I know you can go deeper on each of them, so I'll try to keep it limited. The
Sure.
honor pay thing, very simple. And the vibration and frequency of gratitude, every spiritual person talks about that, and it feels good. And the person even gifting the gratitude, that's good for them too. They're in that just mindset of appreciating gratitude, and that's one of the most powerful things that we can do. So every day you can kind of send a few out, and if you make that a habit, you're in the habit of gratitude, and then people are receiving it and they feel inspired. And when I receive an email or a social media comment or something like that, sometimes you'll do your work and you feel like you're not doing anything, but then you get like a little feedback. You're like, all right, cool, I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to feel appreciated. We're social animals and that sort of stuff, so we want to feel appreciated. We want to be accepted in the pack to a point. But one of the things that, again, I come back to what I kind of call the arithmetic of money, is whereas we reduce everything to this simple equation, 1 + 1 = 2. That all these decisions are based on basic arithmetic, which it fails to include the complexity of life and that sort of thing, and how the stuff works. Sorry, I'm not explaining that well, but what I really mean is that if you're paying someone to do a job for you, of course you're conveying appreciation. But for example, if I pay you $20 to doing something, that means you're now plus $20 and I'm now minus $20. So I've suffered, shall we say? There's been a cost to me for that, because the money thing is so inextricably linked to survival now, for example. That basically it means that, well, for most people, it means that when you pay someone to do that, this is like damaging your castle, if you like. It's making you weaker, because you need to have money to be strong in this money world, So when you're throwing away money, giving away money, you're going to end up homeless, you're going to end up hungry, and the more money you give away, the weaker you become. This is obviously ridiculous, And because of that fact, then that when you're paying something to do things for you, you're kind of suffering a little bit when you actually should be appreciating the gratitude that you're demonstrating. Do you understand what I mean? That it's exactly like you said, that when you appreciate somebody, it's a two-way thing. Both people benefit. I appreciate you for doing something in a very in a nice way, and I feel good for conveying that sense to you as well. When we reduce it to a simple monetary arithmetic, it means you get plus 50 and I get minus 50. And that's kind of means that you're getting something and I'm not, where it's the opposite is really the case. Once you take away the arithmetic part of it, we're both benefiting from that, And as I like to say, gratitude really is the currency of life, really it's appreciation is the currency of life. That's how we get things done.
Yeah, and if you think about it along the same lines, the arithmetic is the cold business transaction on a system above and beyond just being a human. If it was very simple and we lived in a small community and one person made baskets and one person, I don't know, knew how to build houses and one person was the gardener and we cooperated, we could swap. And that's kind of how it was. And, when I just spent 2 weeks with David Lonebear, and he just talked about his culture where if somebody needed something, it was a privilege for them to give it because that was their service to the community. The challenge is very large scale, and we're so entrenched in this system. We're looking at new solutions. We're beginning to build systems to cooperate like you're doing, and eyes are on it because a lot of people in the system are realizing that this is pretty challenging and not a sustainable way to live. So I guess my question is, with all of these things you're doing, because you've written a couple books and I like how they're nonfiction and, they're about economics. How do you see we can start making transition out when you're right in the middle of it? You got to pay bills and you've got kids and, you're in it. And how can we kind of start to execute these?
Absolutely. Of course. And it's important to have the tools in place, like the freeworlder.com, the free sharing network, or the honor pay. It's for me, I think it's important to have these basic tools that can enable those systems for when people are ready. Okay. But for the transition, obviously, is the kind of the big buzzword now, really, that people are talking about. And I've got lots to say on that, as you can imagine. One of the things that I think is the good news is that the transition is really happening anyway. I mean, we're inevitably going to end up in that kind of system. Even if the likes of you or me just sit on our hands and do nothing, I think it's still going to happen because we're slowly moving in that direction. Most people, as you say, are realizing that this system is a crock. This isn't going to be sustainable. It can't keep going like this. And of course, we have more and more misery, and financial stress, I think, is probably one of the most untalked about miseries in the world. I think it's a huge thing. I'm not just talking about poverty. I'm talking about financial stress and people who have money, and it's a big problem called huge illness and that sort of stuff. I think that the transition is going to happen anyway. So it's not something we should be asking is how do we transition, because there's loads of things happening that are making it, even the fact that you and I are having this conversation is a part of that transition. But for me, the only important question is how do we speed up that transition? How do we make that faster? Because if we just sit and wait for it to happen, we could end up with a huge climate chaos somewhere in the middle of that, or we could end up with, God knows, another World War III or something else. There's other things that are precipitating in the background which are dangerous. And it's possible that we might have to go through some really, really hard times to get to the other side. Obviously, I don't want that to happen. I'm sure you don't either. But what we want is we need to transition as fast as possible. So what we need to do is find mechanisms that will basically speed up that process. And the book that I wrote, actually the first one is a fictional novel. It's VDay, the Second Dawn of Man. That was like, I decided to write a story about transition to find out how would we go from today to a money-free world completely. And so I set about writing that story, and that was, I have to say, quite a fascinating process. It took me 3 years to write the book, but it was a fascinating process because even though it's a fictional story, you still have to make it plausible. You still have to have a little plausible increments through the story. So because you can't just say wacky, ridiculous shit like, and then they all lived happily ever after, because no one's going to buy that shit. You have to make it believable. It has to be believable, and that's the challenge of that story. So basically, at the beginning of the book, I can tell you the book has a happy ending, so you have a really good idea where it goes. So basically, it starts off as like here and now where we are, and it starts off then that through kind of a coincidence of things that happen. It begins in one country. One country starts to adopt this kind of money-free idea, And then, of course, other countries start looking at that and they start copying. And that's so kind of it spreads from one country outwards. But what's interesting about it is obviously the story is very much focused in that one country, which was Iceland. This is where I put the focus on the book. And so obviously I had to deal with all the practicalities of how things were working, how things were going, what was working, what wasn't working, what were the challenges, even in a fictional sense, but I still had to deal with those problems in this fictional world. So it was really quite a fascinating process, and I ended up kind of coming up with so many potential solutions to the various problems that I wrote another book about it because I thought that the ideas were good, and I thought that basically I should put these into a separate book. So actually, after writing the first book, the spin-off was a little short non-fiction one called Into the Open Economy, which basically describes in very, very basic, simple terms why we need to move to an open economy, open moneyless economy, and how we deal with the daily practical matters of doing that. For example, how do we keep essential services going? How do we keep vital essential services going? How do we keep food production? How do we maintain law and order? How do we stop things going to chaos? And what do we do with prisons and prisoners and this sort of stuff? So all these kind of little micro questions, things that you kind of wouldn't think on the face of it, they were kind of things that I had to deal with in the book. And so I put them all into the other book as well. So they're kind of like they're like a companion set, I suppose. But the second one, the Into the Open Economy, has been translated into 7 other languages, so it's going really well. You can actually download that for free from Amazon. If you just search Amazon for Into the Open Economy, you'll find it. And like I say, it's completely free to download, and it's only 90 pages. It's a very, very short book, and it's very, very simple. So I would definitely recommend anyone interested in these ideas to download that and check it out. So that's in terms of the transition. This is like, obviously the VDay is a fictional story of transition. Obviously this is not a Bible. This is just one idea of how it could pan out. And I think just for that alone, it's sort of it's been quite inspiring for people. A lot of people have really, really liked the book, and it shows. I don't know. It's like when you break through the jungle for the first time with the sword. You know, it's with the machete. It's like somebody has to break through first and start untangling the mess and start making some sort of a shape on the path. You know, and I think the book has kind of helped a lot of people to do that, to see that. I'm not saying it's not going to go like that, but I think that you need to start making a path, beating a path through the resistance of the incumbent system, and how it might try and stop that, and how it's going to prevent that from happening. So it's quite a fun book, actually. We're hoping to actually make it into a movie as well. This is something that's being discussed at the moment. Talking to a couple of guys about that. One of them who is a producer in the States who is taking an interest in it. So that's really exciting too. That would make a big difference. You know, this would be like bringing this whole idea really into people's living rooms or into their local theaters. So that's really exciting possibility.
Yeah, man, I love all that. And I got to apologize. Someone's like cutting the lawn next door. And I think they're trying to do a pay it forward where they were cutting my lawn. So the whole time I was wanting you to talk, I was like, yes, please keep talking, because this is annoying. I can't even chime in if I want. But you're talking on so many important things. Like through story, we learn through story. And, you know, let's say the man knows this. And so if you look at her stories, it's all about war and competition and strife and the Taliban. Sometimes it's North Korea. Sometimes it's, you know, the terrorists. And you need to create that story first. And so if we can take control of our media, and I just was in Austin for the Conscious Media Festival, and it was wonderful. It's redesigning positive media, because then we see that solution in a very simple way. You know, I've really got back into skateboarding again. And if I see somebody do the trick correctly, I can, the mirror neurons activate, and it's easier for me to do the trick. So now I'm watching more skateboarding than ever before. So if we're watching these solutions be built, you know, every movie out there is about chaos and how the world's coming to an end, and you know, how many different ways can you get shot in the face? It's like, what about how many different ways we could build a beautiful world? And we're all here on this planet. Even if 10% of us work together to build the solution, and I think that's what this generation is. We have that opportunity. And if we can begin to imagine, that's how it starts. We need to imagine the new world, and then we got to do the slow, hard work and start executing and living that way to build it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right about the media thing is always presented. It's like we always have the pantomime villain, you know, in every movie and everything. Even on the news stories, you have whatever politician of the month is the local villain. You know, he's a guy who did terrible things, and I don't know. It's like this perpetual sort of witch hunt all the time, you know, for who's the bad guy? Who's the bad guy? Somebody is the bad guy. I know somebody is the bad guy here. So who's the bad guy? This is a ridiculous idea. You know, I think it's a lot of that comes from maybe from our religious upbringing. You know, we always have this thing about good versus evil. You know, we always have that. We have cowboys versus Indians. We have like cops and robbers. You know, we always we have the same thing repeated over and over again. That there's really good guys and there's really bad guys. I don't think the world is like that at all, you know. I think everyone is capable of doing very good things and very bad things, you know. I mean, I've done bad things as well as good things, you know. I'm not a saint. I'm sure you're the same. So I mean, we're all capable of different things at different times, you know. So I think this again, it comes down to trying to create an oversimplistic storyline, you know. And if you look at any movie nowadays, you'll see like the villain is not just a villain, he's really nasty, you know. He's ugly, he's got a scar on his face, and he talks bad to his girlfriend, and he kicks the dog, and you know, they just lay it on thick, you know. But real life isn't really like that, you know. But of course, yeah, it does kind of help to propel a story along a little bit, always. I try to avoid that as much as possible in the VDay books, you know, to have these sort of pantomime villains or kind of hiding on the street corner all the time. So it's very different actually in some ways, that book, that because it doesn't really toe the line in terms of how you're supposed to write a story with good guys and bad guys. It kind of it shows that. Well, I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but really it comes down to where there is a kind of an antagonist and a protagonist, and how they resolve that problem is actually really what's quite unique about the book. It's not like one guy shoots the other. It's nothing like that at all. It's something not what you expect. So that's what's good, and I like the fact that that's different about the thing. So. If it gets made into a movie, I'm skeptical that a large studio would take it on, probably for that point, because it doesn't have the usual black versus white thing. So maybe it'll be going into an independent production. I would be happier to see the movie made more faithful to the book rather than selling out of the blockbuster with the cheesy ending or whatever, for example. So. Yeah, it's a good book. If it's not free to download, unfortunately, but it's quite cheap to buy, and you'll be obviously supporting our efforts if you by buying that. All the money that we sell in our books, that sort of stuff, all goes back in. So it's important to remember, of course, that even though we have these fantastic ideas and ideology about the world, that we still live in this money world, and most of us pretty much need money to keep life and limb together and to keep ourselves going. So this is why we're sort of introducing a more of a commercial aspect of the business as well, because we need to grow our operations. We need to foster new projects. We need to improve the projects that we have, because it all takes time and money. So this is one thing. It's very important, I think, for people not to confuse the ideology of what we're doing with really the practicalities of promoting it. I always like to say that, like, if we were like a charity or if we were a charity for a children's charity, or for example, for anything, we would still need money to fund our operation and to keep things ticking over. But because we're sort of an organization which is promoting a moneyless world, it seems like the onus is on us. Well, we have to do that without money. but that's actually, it makes it very, very hard in this kind of system. So we're moving into we're creating a couple of commercial associated ventures which are actually going to support this thing. Like, it's a philanthropic company that we're actually just starting off now. It's being launched next week. I'm talking about it at VDay. I don't know if you're familiar with the Zeitgeist movement, VDay.
Oh yeah,
Peter Joseph.
I didn't know they had a VDay. I'm familiar with the documentaries.
Oh yeah. They have a VDay in Frankfurt, Germany. That's next weekend. I'm going to be at that, and they're going to be talking about basically about my work, and also about the new commercial venture, which is like pretty much quite an interesting out of the box idea. That it's basically it's a way of supporting our efforts in promoting this money-free world, but doing it through money, which of course is hugely, it's going to sound hugely ironic to a lot of people, but the reality is that this is the best way to do it. And you can take that from someone who's been 7 or 8 years trying, that to sustain this kind of effort and to grow the sort of ideas that we're trying to grow on an entirely voluntary basis is not efficient. It's not sustainable, and we don't really have the luxury of time to just keep tapping away at these sort of things. We need to speed up what we're doing, because obviously there's unbelievable hardship and damage going on all over the world because of this ridiculous, outdated system that we're still using. So we need to find any way possible to try and expedite this transition, to bring us into this new world. So one of the things we're doing with the new company, which is called Free World One, by the way, you can Google that if you want. It's basically, we're going to be like funding and backing lots of different projects for that basically promote our message. A good example would be the books and the movie, for example. These would be 100% commercial projects, which the money would go back into the company which funds the other projects, like the Free World Network and that sort of stuff. And the other thing we're doing is we've already started on an educational book series that we're hoping to get into schools. These are books which are aimed at kind of young kids from like 4 to 12, to actually teach them like useful life skills such as empathy and compassion and cooperation, sharing, and communication and respect, responsibility, all these kind of really basic qualities of life that really we kind of leave to chance a lot in life, and we need to stop doing that and start deliberately or intentionally educating kids towards a better way that's going to work for everybody, So that's something we're really excited about, actually. So it's called, those books are called Play Up Games, because what we're doing is we're introducing activities and exercises that kids can learn these kind of basic life skills through games. So they understand, they experience the thing. For example, if they want to learn respect and responsibility, rather than like pointing to a blackboard and saying you must do this, this, and this, and this, we have to put it into an experiential game where they actually experience why it felt good to do it that way, and why it felt bad to do it that way. You understand? So I think kids it's the fastest way to learn, is through experience. It's theory, and writing is not the fastest way to learn because it's abstract. But when you actually feel something emotionally, if you feel left out because you did something bad, or you're physically hurt because you did something bad, immediately you're probably not going to do that thing again, whatever it was. And conversely, if you did something that makes you feel good, however, probably you're going to want to do that again as well. So it's all happening. There's a lot of things going on. I'm very excited about the educational project and the new company. So it's a way of, it's like a way of hybridizing our efforts to actually still be promoting the good stuff and focusing on the things that will actually make that world possible, but doing it through a for-profit model that actually makes that sustainable. Because without that, it's not sustainable, because the system that we use is just too overpowering, it's too overwhelming, and it's like screaming into the wind sometimes, you know. So it's tough. It's tough out there doing this sort of thing. So we have to take radical action. We have to do something different, and that's why we're like hybridizing our efforts.
Interesting. Yeah, man. Well, I totally know exactly what you're talking about. This is what I talked about, the transition, because we're in the money system. I'm in the money
Yeah.
system. I've been doing the podcast for 3 years, and it's made a few bucks, definitely not living money. And it's a service and I enjoy it. And I think it provides value, and it's something that I contribute. I contribute to a lot of causes like the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. I always encourage everyone to check out because that's just launched now. It's itnj.org. They're doing.
This is with related to Sasha Stone. He's involved in that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, they're looking at the child trafficking, child sex in the sex trade in the world. And, they need money to share what this is. And we have billions of dollars to promote a movie. The Rock's new movie is coming out, and they've got all, they can easily access millions and millions in eyeballs. And I love The Rock. And I was like, yo, and he's doing something cool too about inspiring people to be their best. But I was like, yo, let's look at real world solutions too. It's so easily accessed with so much money. And I always kind of get confused with certain projects of why there is no money, and it makes it very challenging. Michael Tellinger's Ubuntu project is another really cool one. But if we have the money for marketing, then we can share the idea wide and far. And what's happening is the people with money now share different ideas very wide and very far. And I know a lot of people personally that dedicate to some sort of service, and they figure out gifting. And that's literally personally what I'm working on right now too, with how I coach and how I spend my time, because I'm getting a big influx of people. A lot more people want to come on the podcast. A lot more people just want to talk to me. A lot more people want my coaching, and I want to help everybody. And I was like, I don't know how to handle this time. So I'm learning new systems. And it's like, if you don't have the money, I'd love to just give that to you. And then I'm like, I still need to buy a sandwich because this is how it works. But my kind of spiritual guidance system is to support the community. So kind of this is why I feel like it's transition for the new systems of we're figuring it out. We don't know. I have to go use money to pay for things as far as I know. I haven't really tried the experiment where I don't. And what it reminded me of was I used to think that you shouldn't pay companies to market for their charities. And I saw a TED Talk on why that when they run it as like a business, they actually create way more money. So this isn't talking about whether the charity is actually putting the money towards the cause and it's a good charity. It's just talking about the efficiency of the charity. And basically what the guy said was like, I think they were raising money for cancer or something, and they had raised like 10, 12 million the year before. People had found out that they were using money for advertising, for admin, for things like this. And so they axed it all. And then next year the company raised, or the charity raised $1 million. And what his point was, is that you have all these people coming out of Harvard and Stanford or really smart, educated, talented people. And if you give them the opportunity to thrive and make some money, $300,000 a year, spreading goodness for humanity for this charity, but then you're like, no, we're only going to pay you $30,000 a year because you got to do this out of the kindness of your heart. He's like, well, they could go get their job for 300 or 500K or whatever it is, and just contribute that financially if they wanted. So it was a little bit of a twist for me. And I think that crowdfunding is another thing that can help. So I guess where I wanted to go with this, because I'm curious, so like, can you speak about some of the systems that you've come across? Like, what if you were just gifted, $20 billion, how do we start building it now? How do you see people move within their minds and change within themselves? And what systems do you see starting to build? Because I've had this discussion with my friends quite a few times, is that even when this money comes in, ideally, maybe some of us get super rich on crypto. Some of us get rich on a currency reevaluation, if that's real. Whatever the case is, once we get all the money, we need to execute on the plan. So it's like we know that we want to train to go from A to B, but we have to build it each and every day. So what kind of systems and solutions have you seen that you would love to build?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. I just want to get back to before you say that about the salaries of charities. It's a big scandal in Europe, actually, in quite a few charities in UK, especially, where some of these CEOs or charities were getting like massive salaries of, 500,000 euros a year. I mean, who the hell needs that kind of money? It's just ridiculous, especially in the charities. So I think that's a lot of people are copying onto that. And but even still in Ireland, where I'm from, it's a big problem as well. You have 3 or 4 very big charities, and they make a lot of money, and probably 60 or 70% of it goes to their admin costs and that sort of stuff, which is kind of ridiculous, really. But what we're doing in our company, actually, which is a little bit different, and I should point out, actually, is that we're capping all the wages. We're having a maximum salary. So like the maximum salary for anyone, from me or for anyone else working in the company, is going to be the same. And it's going to be like a really, really minimal salary. We haven't actually figured on the thing yet, but the idea is that the salary is just going to be what we need really to live on very comfortably. I've no interest in having a large salary now at all, now I have to say, and the other people who are involved as well are not interested. We're here for the good of what we're trying to promote. But it's going to be super helpful if we can make a bit of money from doing that. So that's what makes the difference. And what you mentioned there about your podcasting, that you're trying to juggle things, and you still have to make ends meet. If I was to say to you, okay, well, I can give you like 2 or 3 grand a month, for example, and this is going to be enough for you to live on, whatever, that just makes it so much easier for you. You can just concentrate on your podcasting 100% and all that sort of thing. So these kind of things is what I'm talking about, where we find the good projects, we find the people who are doing good things, and we're going to invest in these things. We're going to invest in these projects and back these things, and of course we're going to back the profitable projects as well. And that's a way of keeping the business sustaining itself, because obviously we can't just give out money to everyone. That's not going to work. So we have to have a way of making money and making it in a way that really suits our aims. And we're lucky actually that there's quite a decent intersection between the ideas that we're promoting and ways that we can actually make money from doing so. I mentioned the educational books for schools there earlier. This is potentially a huge untapped market that we're looking at the moment. We've done some preliminary research in the UK and Ireland, and we have teachers more or less crying out for the sort of things that we're offering to sell, and I think the results of our survey was like 85% of teachers said that they would use this product in their class. So this is like, I'm talking about the products, the books that are kind of teaching empathy and compassion through things, because a lot of teachers, they suffer tremendously with behavioral problems in students. It's a big problem, especially in big cities and stuff like that. That student behavior is very, very poor, and they're looking for ways to tackle it. And in some cases, the classes are out of control. So it's a huge problem. Obviously, the kids don't want to be there. I don't blame them. I didn't want to be there either. To learn this crap. So we need to start teaching them the good stuff. But so that's this. So that educational thing is one way it's a potentially a very large and profitable market. It's a way that our company, the Free World One company, can actually make quite a decent amount of revenue while actually promoting stuff that's needed anyway, and it fits with our ideas. So yes, well, you were asking what systems would it promote if I got the check from Bill Gates for whatever, a few $1 billion. What am I going to spend that money on? Well, I would have to say the most important things, the 3 most important things that I consider are education, not just of children's education, but educating adults as well. The second thing is raising awareness and actually just literally bringing the ideas to people, because most people can't even conceive of such an idea of how a world could operate without money. You mentioned to people about, okay, let's try a society without money. They just shut down, shutters down, lights off, no one home. So we need to find a way. I think the movie, for example, is a really good format. If you could, maybe not this book or anything, if you could do a really good, entertaining movie with Tom Cruise and I don't know, someone else, and get like loads of people to see this movie and to see I think it really will open up immense possibilities. I'm quite optimistic actually that if this movie goes ahead, that we may even be able to get like decent A or B list actors involved on a pro bono basis, because a lot of the word, what I'm hearing, I have a couple of friends of mine are kind of sort of Hollywood insiders, and there's a kind of a movement even within Hollywood of people who are kind of starting to reject the system, who are starting to think back, start to think differently. Jim Carrey, for example, and Tom Shadyac, who also produced Ace Ventura, even the likes of James Cameron, they're all kind of starting to express different ideas and ways to promote different societies. So it's quite possible when this script is ready to go that we might actually get some quite heavy, big names in there on a pro bono basis. But yeah, the other thing that was like education, yeah, and then raising awareness. So you can do that through movies, through media, and any sort of way like that. We know now, obviously, how well easily we are manipulated through media. I mean, that's kind of common knowledge now. With even the ridiculous stuff going on with Cambridge Analytica is a kind of a way of showing us how really easily molded we are just by the stuff that we experience in our daily lives, and how it shapes the reality around us, because as far as I'm concerned, I think Hillary Clinton should have easily won that election. The only reason was that she didn't really was because these conspiring forces basically turned people against her, I'm not saying Hillary Clinton was a better option by any means, but I'm saying that she was like the favorite, certainly, with the established option. So the fact that Trump got in obviously means that somebody somewhere is pulling strings, and has discovered that it's actually really quite easy to pull those strings. I believe the same thing may have happened with Brexit in UK as well, where we had a shock result of people saying that they did want to leave the European Union. And that was really unexpected. I think it was a lot of social media manipulation going on there as well. But the good news is that because we are so easily manipulated, we can also manipulate ourselves into the good stuff, and that's what we need to do, So I always say, that's fine. We can be indoctrinated, that's great, but let's just indoctrinate ourselves with the good stuff and not the crap stuff. So raising awareness is a big one, yeah. The other thing then is prototyping. This is just like I was saying, there's three things: education, awareness, and prototyping. There's a very famous quote from like Buckminster Fuller, which kind of says, "Well, don't try and fight the existing system. Build a new one that makes the old one obsolete." And that's really what we've tried to begin with the Free World or Free Sharing Network. We're trying to create a little micro moneyless economy, and in the hope that it will continue to grow someday, and then eventually it could actually become a viable alternative to the likes of Amazon or eBay. If we can keep growing like that, and if people start realizing that actually they can get the stuff that they need for free, whether it's goods or services, they can, instead of going to Amazon or eBay, they can say, look at Free World, and it's because there's going to be so much stuff on there that they'll have a good chance of finding what they need. So that's a possibility. We can build like a good prototype model like that. And of course, the prototype can also be like what Michael Tellinger is doing in the one small town idea, where he's trying to promote this self-sufficiency in a small town in Frontenac, I think, isn't it? And that's really exciting stuff. So anything that kind of shows how it can work is really what we need, because at the end of the day, everyone who disagrees with the idea will say, well, I don't believe it'll work. So you have to be able to say, okay, well, here it is working. Go here and have a look, and you'll see for yourself that it works.
Yeah. Well, I think Tellinger's got a city in Canada, and then the last time I talked to him, he shared that after one city took essentially the Ubuntu project, which anybody could look up. I think it's ubuntu.com or .org, and it's a simple idea, and it's a new system. It's a new idea, and then we need to execute on that to get feedback to see how well it worked, and then contribute and communicate with other ideas and other systems, and then start combining them together. And what it really requires is, the first thing is the idea. then the model, right, the prototype, and then the actual action and
Yep.
execution. And then we just get feedback and we can improve on that. And I think a lot of
Yep.
people have been doing that. And,
Yep.
even over the years of you kind of just thinking about all this stuff, most people don't think about it. It's a huge problem. People don't
Mm.
normally think about how can we change everything, look at the world and what's going on.
Yeah.
And when we start to plant these ideas, and let's say people with influence, whether it's in Hollywood or wherever, start to see a little bit of momentum, maybe they can kind of give a push. There's going to be
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
some help coming in, the cavalry, so
Oh
to
yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
so right now, what I see on the planet is I'm always looking for this. This is a podcast for that, trying to find people that are thinking
Mm.
differently, that are looking to build solutions, that are banging their heads against the wall and saying, hey, this is
Mm.
what I've come up with. Might not be
Mm-hmm.
perfect, but it does
Mm.
seem to be a model that is, everyone's going
Mm.
around with a square wheel, and you kind of got maybe, I don't know, like an octagon type of shape. It's like, it might not be perfect, but I feel like it's a little bit better than this square, and we can give it a try. And really the bottom line for me on all of this stuff, when I imagine a new earth or a improved system, when I was
Mm-hmm.
in Austin for the Conscious Media Festival, we did a kind of like a new earth day, a new earth imagination, and we got the people to give all this feedback on what they would see, this ideal earth if we could invent it from scratch, like children in kindergarten, and we wanted a world that we all enjoyed. Really the main things were cooperation and expansion, and going from, which Jacques Fresco talks about, from a profit-based economy to a resource-based economy. And there was a strong emphasis on education. And I was doing some journaling and thinking last night, and because I have a nephew who's 3.5, and talking about school and things like that, and I was talking to a friend on the phone because she has kids and she homeschools them. And I realized, and then I'm thinking, and then in the spiritual sense, I realized right away what education does, and the system of it, what they teach you right away, essentially, is to give your authority to somebody else as quickly as possible, as one of like the most fundamental important things, where rather than taking authority for yourself in your life within yourself, you're really taught to listen outside you, to the teacher for information, to the policeman for your law, for the doctor for your health. And really, if that's kind of like this fundamental thing, rather than your connection with yourself and spirit. And so if we can
Yeah.
rethink and reimagine education to empower the individual,
Yep.
with
Yeah.
these
Exactly.
spiritual principles, with these personal development principles, with these biological principles. They talk about biohacking. It's just every time I think biohacking,
Yeah.
I just think, meditate and just use common sense. But we have these, forest bathing, go in the forest, just go outside, stop watching TV, go outside. You can now forest bathe. It's even better than it was before. And so I feel like education is the most important piece. So then
Of
it
course.
gets into the challenge of, because I am in it, I'm living the challenge, and it's fun and challenging and stressful, and sometimes I want to scream,
Mm.
throw my skateboard. I don't know. And some days it's beautiful and just magical, and I'm in the magic of life and experience. And
Yeah.
so and you're in it too, you had the business, now you're banging your head against the wall, you have an idea that you want to share, but you need the money to share it, and then it's like, oh, I got to monetize this. So
Mm-hmm.
when someone's listening to this on the treadmill, or they're walking down the street and they're in their life and they're imagining in their hearts this new world, and that new world starts with their world. That's how I feel. Your connection with yourself and what you want to
Mm-hmm.
create. You can create this new world for yourself. And once you kind of teach yourself to swim, and your consciousness and your spirit is good, and you're not being kind of manipulated too much by outside sources, they're not stealing your energy. Like, you're still in it, but you're not giving it all your energy, and you have time to imagine your life. You have time to, if I can get what I need, I want to contribute this, I can make a difference in my community, and then it can go bigger. So I feel like we need to learn how to swim first, and then start pulling people out, and then get into larger systems like what you're proposing, what Tellinger's proposing, what people are
Mm-hmm.
proposing. And I
Yep.
guess as I say all this and get to the question, it would be, what would you recommend for someone listening to this that wants to get involved? They want to
Mm-hmm.
improve their life, they want to contribute, and they're right in it, and
Mm-hmm.
just simple things that maybe they can
Yep.
to do, or think
Yep.
about, so they can improve their life, make a little bit of difference, maybe for themselves, their family, their
Yeah.
community. and in a bigger way if they see that also.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you really summed it up very well. There is assume your own authority, take back your own authority. That can be tough to do for a lot of people. Like I say, we're so deeply indoctrinated in that. One of the things that we're hoping to inspire in the educational thing that we're doing is to start taking the teacher away from this dictatorial position and into more of a navigator position, which I think really is what the teacher is supposed to do. And of course, the other thing is to facilitate group learning. To not to have one dictator of facts and a lot of people learning, but to actually have group learning because learning really is a circular process. If you any teacher, for example, the teachers learn from the students as well, but they don't really talk about that so much. But the learning it needs to be a two-way or a circular process. And I think that would actually make learning a lot more fun. If you actually, instead of, I don't know, if you want to do a maths lesson, for example, instead of having one guy at a blackboard saying, okay, this is how it works, do this, why not put everyone around the circle and say, okay, we want to figure out how do we do this maths problem, for example, then, but what do you know? Okay, well, you know that, okay, and what does this person know? And then let's try and combine the knowledge, and let's try and, if we turn it into like a big puzzle that all the members of the group solve, it becomes much more engaging and much more interesting, and people are much more invested in the solution, Whereas, excuse me, with the teacher just dictating the solution, it's not the same, doesn't have the same experiential value, and that's really what I think is lacking in education, is having that experience, that basically teaches you what is the solutions to problems, So group learning and the teacher as navigator, I think, really is a really useful thing that we need to start incorporating in schools. Yeah, you're asking about what would you recommend for people who are starting out with this way of thinking. Yeah, I would say certainly become self-responsible. That's the most important thing, to stand on your own authority. That's really, really important. I myself was someone who maybe lacked quite a lot in self-confidence years ago. And one day I just kind of said, well, something, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm tired of that. So and it's amazing how liberating that is. It's like you have this, you're carrying this thing on your back all the time, and eventually you say, well, something, I'm just going to put this down right here, and I'm going to go on with myself without this. So I've had quite an interesting personal life in many experiences like that, where basically I carried on doing things until someday I realized, well, I'm not doing that thing anymore ever again, and moving on. That's such a liberating experience. Like, I can tell you've probably done this kind of thing too. So I think this is taking self-responsibility is really cool. And when you do that, when you start becoming self-responsible, you see things differently. You start seeing things differently. You start to understand your place within the cosmic unity, I suppose, better than when you're just acting in self-interest. And there's a huge difference between self-interest and self-responsibility. So most people are absorbed with self-interest, but self-responsibility really is just taking responsibility for yourself. And when you do that, you also discover that actually I'm responsible for these other people too. I didn't even realize that before. And that's part of being self-responsible. So I think that's probably the only, I mean, if you wanted to, I mean, I'm not going to tell people to buy the books or something like that, because that's shallow. But the point is that if you want to start making these changes in your life to move towards this kind of world, then yeah, I would say, as you said yourself, take back your authority, become self-responsible, and of course, start questioning what you do or what you hear. But that's going to happen anyway. Again, it's part of being self-responsible. You start being more critical of the stuff that you listen to and what people are saying to you. One of the funny side effects of my journey is that I can't watch television anymore. It's impossible for me to watch TV because it's so damn annoying. The ads are so loud, and it's so the sales pitches are so shallow and feeble, and I don't know. It's just like a big noise, a shouting in the corner all the time. So it's like when you kind of find that sort of inner sense of peace and sort of satisfaction with yourself, I think that all these kind of extraneous noises become quite unbearable. So I live quite a nice, peaceful existence now, I'm happy to say, kind of with minimal media interference. Actually, that would be another thing that I would say. It probably is to start cutting down your consumption of media, of newspapers, of TVs, and news websites and stuff like that. Because really, this stuff is just full of shit. Really, it's full of hyper sensationalist stories that are just there to try and elicit some kind of emotional response, make you angry, make you sad, or make you feel bad about yourself or insecure. So really drop any of the sort of normal media channels. I would say drop all them as soon as possible if you can.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was chatting with my nephew this morning or yesterday, and he's full of girls in the house, and so they have a different perspective, and it's fine.
Yeah.
The boy perspective is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But one of the things I was teaching him, and this doesn't have to do with girls or boys, but I was just trying to educate him however I can. And I was like, he's watching TV. I was like, that's fine. I was like, do you understand? And he's like 3.5. I was like, do you understand the difference between a consumer and a creator? He's like, no. I was like, anything that you're involved with, you can go play with Play-Doh, you can make art, you stared at ants for like an hour yesterday. I was like, it's passive and active. I was like, you want to be active with your reality as much as possible. And many people become passive. And then once you're passive, though, you're in that. That's the hardest thing to break, is that that cycle that you're in. So you can do something so small, start to drive a different way to work. Just break your pattern. Never go the same way. Drive down the street, then make a left, and just start breaking up your patterns. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And what that does is you have this like circuitry, right? You become a robot. And if you look at a factory line, that's literally what the robots are doing. And we become mechanical. And so if we want to switch it, we can switch our physiology first. And what you're sharing about the consumption of television and media, the idea on the big scale is a zapper of attention. And that's one of the things I'll share on the podcast sometimes, is like, thank you so much for your intention. My intention is that if you're with me, that it's going to be valuable, it's going to help in some way. It's going to be, it's going to give you some sort of supportive energy, some sort of inspiring energy for you to go and create your reality, to empower you, because the intention and the attention of something is so important. And if you look out there, most of the intention of the magazines and different things, they're not really great, and it's not fulfilling. I saw something on Instagram the other day say, they call them stars because we're supposed to look at them for direction. What do movie stars do? Nothing but make movies. Now, some of them do cool stuff. Some of them are great, and nothing wrong with being a movie star. That's fine. But who are we looking up to, and why are we looking up to them? I'm an athlete. I love athletes, but why am I looking up to an athlete? Because they're really good at a game? Like, that's really cool, and I'm really great that you've mastered something. That I can respect that. I can respect that you've mastered something. But where are the real stars? Where are the people that, the Mother Teresa's or the scientists or the people working and building something? And where are the people in the community that have, gone to the soup kitchen every week for the last 10 years? Those are people that we want to be putting up and educating and say, this is a human we should look up to, because that's going to create fulfillment.
Yeah, I know. And we have a lot of things in reverse, of course, as well, as to who we actually revere and idolize, I suppose. I had a conversation with someone a while ago where we were saying, what was it now? Something about, we were talking about somebody who was cleaning the streets. I can't remember exactly the conversation, but something along the lines of, this girl was cleaning the streets, and she was doing it because she was unemployed, that the government had a scheme of basically employing or getting unemployed people to do work in the community. And I remember seeing this girl walking back from work one day, and she was kind of like dragging a piteous sight, dragging her dustbin and brush along the ground behind her, looking very dejected and very sad. And I remember thinking, and I mentioned it to somebody, that isn't it so backwards that here's a girl who's basically kind of outcast from society because she doesn't have a job, and she's feeling so bad about cleaning the streets, but actually what she's doing there, cleaning the streets, is actually a million times more important than what somebody who's really ultra famous or a millionaire is probably doing. You know, that she's actually shoveling shit for people and cleaning up things, and this is a really, really important thing to do. You know, that we don't value these things at all. People who clean sewer pipes, or who clean up clean the roads and all this sort of stuff. These are really important jobs, and these people really should be, you know, really, really respected for those kind of things. And then the people that we really respect and look up to on our TVs are people who are generally doing nothing, pretty much. You know, they're celebrities just for the sake of being celebrities. So really, we have that. Yeah, we have that whole icon thing back to front. But again, it comes down to how we're programmed. You know, if the TV shows us a picture of a pretty girl and say, okay, this girl is she's really cool. You know, you like her, okay, right? So okay, yeah, we like her, and yeah, she's great, and she's famous for whatever reason, singing or acting or whatever. It's like, I don't know. It's just have you heard of the mere exposure effect? It's basically that the more you actually just expose people to an idea or an image, then the more they actually, that just becomes part of their normal consciousness, and the more they actually accept that as something important, you know, which might not be important at all. So you have like celebrities who are famous just only for being famous because they're on the TV and they haven't done anything. So yeah, I mean, I always say that the fact that we're just so easily persuaded and so malleable is actually a good thing. We just need to turn it to the good rather than the bad, you know. So I would love to see a day where people who clean shit on the streets are really, really held in high esteem in the communities, as they should be. You know, these people are really important, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think the core of it is admiration for contribution. What is the
Yeah.
person doing? You know, because you could have a millionaire or an actor doing really great thing when they go out and they love their craft and they're really great to everyone they're around, and they're contributing in their own way and they're expressing themselves to the maximum amount. That's great.
Mm.
You know, it's
Mm.
just that sometimes with even music, if you look at music and, you know, now you can build up a musician and you listen to the lyrics, and they're fabricated kind of like a doll, like a Ken doll in
Yeah,
a line, and
yeah,
then they give a push button and they just say nothing. But then you've got these brilliant musicians that are out there that are I don't know, they've mastered poetry and their craft, and it's really hard to hear
yeah,
them. And so if we can just, you know, as a society, uh, be aware of who we're admiring. And the
mm.
word that you use that's so important is programming.
Mm.
Do a hypnosis script, which I'm aware of, and I look at the radio and things like that. I can read the scripts even in ads. I was like, oh yeah, I can read the script. So be very aware of
Yeah.
what you're taking in. In Buddhism, they'll refer to it as mental nutriments. And so if you just see the same image over and over and over, it's gonna
Yeah.
get in there. So just be really mindful. Just go stare at a tree instead. You know, go just sit and be bored by a
Yeah.
tree, and you're going to
Yeah.
connect more with yourself,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
than going home and you're tuning out or you're tuning into another agenda. And it
Yeah.
feels good because, you know, we're kind of conditioned for this little bit of this chemical response in a body, and it's really hard to snap out of it. And nature is the
Mm.
best way. Just go for a walk, just do anything
Mm.
to snap out. And then you're going to connect more with yourself, because like you said, the small things, that person cleaning the street. I went for a walk the other day and I picked up some trash on the way to this walk in Vancouver,
Mm.
and I put it in the trash. And then when I got down to the bottom of the stairs, there's this woman and her daughter walking. She had a whole bag. She's like, I always walk with a whole bag and I fill it up. I was like, you are friggin' awesome. I love you.
Mm.
Thank you. And so it's simple things like that where people in the community are
Yeah.
taking care, and that goes a
Mhm.
long way. So if you get to know your
Mhm.
neighbors, if you bring them some
Yeah.
cookies, if you just say hello, you know, you're getting to know
Mm.
the people around you. It doesn't have to be this massive planetary thing, although that would be great. You can be the
Mm.
example wherever you are. And that starts
Mm.
from filtering out your own stuff. And then you're just showing your community that you're awake
Mm.
and that you're
Yeah.
aware and that you're here and that you're
Mm.
in it with them too. And it's so simple, and it provides such a great example, because I think that some people will get overwhelmed, like it's too big. I feel that way
Mm.
sometimes. It's too big, it's
Mm.
too horrible. You know,
Mm.
how am I supposed to pay for my bills? Oh my God, this problem.
Mm.
Is like, okay,
Mm.
cool. What I can do is I can get centered. I can be
Mm.
a good example for my community, and
Mm.
that's all I can do. and I'll feel better that way. So
Yeah,
that's my
yeah.
rant.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. But definitely to try and steer away from the media, the programming, that sort of stuff. And I don't think I don't really ascribe to the idea that the media intentionally try to manipulate people. I don't think that's very an oversimplification. I think the system really kind of necessitates that the media try to make as much money as possible, to pay all the salaries of the people who work in the media, So obviously, if you're running one of these business media corporations, of course it's going to be in your interest to try and have them, like say, the most shocking stories or the most inspiring stories or the most the thing that are going to get the strongest reaction, basically. And whatever that is, because the bottom line, you need to have more viewers, you need to keep your advertising clients happy, and so it's everything is just a big cycle, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, because the more money you need to create, the more you need to find sort of stories that are going to shock people more. Because at the end of the day, it's because we're sort of programmed to kind of to fear danger more so than to appreciate gain. That's sort of psychologically been proven. Basically, these media companies, they more or less they tap into that we're more hardwired to react to fear and something negative rather than something positive. So that means that basically you get more people interested, more people listening and watching. You got more users, you can charge more advertising dollars and that sort of stuff. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So unfortunately, as long as we're still in that sort of profit game, it's always going to be like that. That it's going to be, we're going to prioritize the profit above all else. It's just human nature to do that. That as long as we reduce everything to a simple, basic bottom line, then we're going to be cutting corners. We're going to be doing things that are not necessarily beneficial for all. So.
Yeah, I think that's your
Yeah.
rule number 8, or principle number 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We just need to prioritize the good stuff, and I don't know, just start. I think, as you say, I think it's probably the most important thing I'm taking away from this is to become self-responsible, to become your own authority, and that can be really hard. That can be really, really, really hard for people. I have to say, it was hard for me. I was quite a little bit subdued by that, maybe for quite a large period of my life. The school system didn't work for me personally. I rejected the school system, so I kind of more or less failed in that regard. And I don't know. I ended up paying for that for quite a long time afterwards. So that was a bit of a struggle for me personally. And I'm sure, like, everyone has their own struggles, of course, but I think everyone has their own skeletons in the closet or whatever. And I think when you begin to start to taking responsibility for your own life, then you start to look at things more critically, and I think you can improve things there. And as I say, once you become more self-responsible and more critical, I think you also learn to appreciate your place within the community and the world in general a lot more than before. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting time to be alive. I think there's so many good things happening. I think it's really good. The fact that we're all talking about this means that we all know that this big thing is coming around the corner. Even the most ardent skeptic or whatever, if you say to them, well, are we going to be living like this in 50 years' time? Most of them won't agree. They'll say, no, something is going to change. There's going to be a shift. So we all know a big change is coming around the corner, and we just have to keep pushing the buttons to keep it. That's the good change, not the bad one.
Yes, brother. 100% agree, man. Well, it's been a privilege, man. I really enjoyed the charter. Anybody who comes up with that and even takes time to think about it for a period of time, you've earned my respect. And even just having, I would recommend people just go and look at the charter and see how they can apply it to their lives. Because, I get in this thing of like, when I look at the world and say I go down the rabbit hole of food or money or war or whatever, I'm like, oh my goodness, it can get really dark. And if I want to affect change, probably not me alone is going to affect the whole entire change. And what I can do is I can live the principles that I've created for myself and show that example. That I can do and I can honor, and that does make a difference. And ultimately my reality will change. and I'll have other opportunities to play a bigger game, but I need to learn how to swim myself first. And so I invite people to go check out the charter, sign in, have a peek, start thinking about different ways, have fun. Don't make it so serious. It is serious, but you can create your own reality too. You know, just pitch in where you can. So what I wanted to ask you before you go, is there anything that you wanted to touch on, you want to share, or you want to leave the listeners with, and obviously where to get a hold of you and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, we've quite a lot of projects going on. As I mentioned before, we're kind of putting everything under one umbrella. It's a company called Free World One, which is probably, if you wanted to kind of touch on any of these projects, it's probably a good central starting point. The idea is that as I mentioned, that we'd be able to create a revenue that's going to keep all these projects going, because we have to do that to keep everything sustainable. So that's I always ask people to check out the Free World One idea as well, and they can see it's a good way of maybe understanding where we're coming from a money perspective. I think that's probably a good summary of that idea, because this company is basically really trying to bridge two worlds. You know, we have this idea, this ideological world that we all want to get to, but it's not necessarily that easy to get to. And then we have, of course, the money world that we live in now. So, which obviously isn't working for the majority of people. So we have to hybridize our efforts. And what I'm trying to do with the Free World One initiative is to basically bridge both these worlds. If you read down through that site, I think you'll probably figure out quite quickly why that has to be done that way, and also why it's better to actually move towards a money-free world. I think it's kind of done quite well in that. But anyone can contact me through that site. There's a contact form there, or you can get me at contact@freeworld1.com. It's no problem. I'd love to talk to anyone. I'm very happy to help anyone to spread these ideas, keep spreading the good stuff. You know, that's what we're here for, and that's what you're here for, I can see. And I think it's good. Just keep spreading the good stuff, and anyone wants to talk to me, just get in touch with me through that. That'd be great.
Amazing, brother. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the effort you've put in to get as far as you have, and just wishing you more success and amplification of that message. And I'm glad you're an ambassador out there. Yeah, sharing the good stuff.
Wow, thanks very much, Matt. That's fantastic. Listen, really nice to talk to you, man. We'll talk again in a few months. Yeah, and let's do a catch up. Yeah.
We'll stay connected. Yeah, brother. Okay, thanks
Wonderful.
for coming.
Thanks. Live long and prosper. Yeah?
See you, brother.